Hey everyone, welcome back to this week's video. My name is David, and last week we talked about anxiety as like the umbrella term. We talked about avoidance, the costs that come with avoidance. We talked about confrontation. We talked about acceptance being the bridge between the two of them. And we've also talked about Carl Jung and how anxiety can become a signal giver that points us towards meaning. And so what we haven't talked about is the question of what actually gives me the strength or the power, the energy, the motivation to go through perhaps confronting my anxiety, even going through the sufferings of my life, whether that's from anxiety or any other like difficult situation that you're going through. And so this is what this video is going to be about. We're going to talk about Viktor Frankl. He's a really important figure and a big contributor to this topic. And yes, so we're going to talk about the question what actually gives me the strength to go through suffering my suffering. Okay, so let's begin with a little bit of criticism. And I say criticism because when we talk about going through difficult situations or hard situations, then a lot of times people attribute their act to like the positive affect of the situation. So that's your happiness, you know, that's your fun, your feeling of safety, and it's always concerned with the positive affect of a situation. So I do something because it feels good, or when I feel good. And the problem with these positive affects driven concepts is that when the harder times of life, when they arise, when like the storm comes, yeah, these things are just blown out the window real fast. Like my happiness, my fun, my feeling of safety, that all goes away really quick. And as soon as I'm suffering, there's no more fun. There's no more like motivation, right? There's no more feeling of safety, right? So it's really not the best concepts to build our action upon. And so here we can go and talk about Viktor Frankl. Because if we were to ask Frankl what things can actually carry me through the harder times in life, then his answer would probably sound like hope. And that hope is built on meaning. And so this meaning, it isn't so much concerned with life's meaning. Like I think of this narrative where we swallow a lot of things and we just keep it together and we keep working, and all in hopes of this grand finale, right? This time where I finally get like the gratification and the respect that I deserve, so to say, right? Like the validation and all that. But I don't think that happens very often. The question isn't about my life's meaning. This question is scalable, right? So Frankl tells us, what is it all good for is not a question that I ask life or the world, but rather that the world asks this question to us, right? So we're being asked what we take this suffering for. Like, what is it all good for? What is our reason to go through this pain, to go through this suffering, right? And this question is scalable. So, and I think that's the great thing about how like Viktor Frankl thinks about meaning. Most of the times it's concerned with life's meaning, like will it all be worth it? But that's not at all how Frankl talks about it. It's scalable. So Frankl says there's meaning in every moment, and it sort of waits to be found. And so if you, for example, if you think about chronic pain patients, right? People that have chronic pain, they rarely think about the future in terms of the next 5 years. They think of perhaps, you know, the scope is a week, like next week. You know, sometimes the horizon's this day. And if they're in pain, like the horizon is this very minute. And so what Frankl says is in every moment you can find meaning, right? And so it's really important to know if, for example, you were to ask yourself where you derive your meaning from, it doesn't need to be the big thing, right? The big revealing part. It can be small parts, and those small parts, they can also carry meaning. So yeah, that's important to remember. Let's get into Frankl a little bit deeper. What does he mean when he says there's meaning to be found in every moment? So a quick rundown of like who Frankl is, and I'm not going to make due to the like quantity of his work, neither the quality of his work. If you're interested in Frankl, it's definitely going to be worth your while. You should read the book Man's Search for Meaning. But yeah, just for this video, so Viktor Frankl was a Jewish psychiatrist that lived in Switzerland, and in 1942 until 1945, he was an inmate in the Nazi Germany's concentration camps. He was in Auschwitz. He lost his wife, his mother, and his brother to the regime, and he survived. Like, he's been there 3 years. He was in different camps. He worked there, and he survived. And after you know, this chaos stopped, his lifetime, he spent researching this question, how they could survive this kind of horrible situation. Like, what was it actually that helped him to get through this suffering? And so this is really, and I suppose this is why psychologists love Frankl so much. He's like the living example of this kind of thinking. It's great. Frankl said, in the end, what helped him to get through was hope. But hope was built on meaning. And with meaning, we know there's 2 dimensions out of which human beings can create or generate meaning. So there's the creation. Every time you can build something, you can make something, create something, you can sort of manifest something into being. And this part of, or this kind of acting, out of this kind of acting, a human being can create meaning in his life. Similarly, with experience, in the domain of experience, we can experience beauty, we can experience nature, we can experience music, art, dance, love. We can like to be in love with one another. This is one of the deepest forms of human experience, and in there lies meaning. So we have those 2 domains of the generation of meaning in our lives for every human being. And if you think about Auschwitz, the fair conclusion would be that Auschwitz made its inmates suffer meaninglessly. Really, and I think that's the worst form of being there is. To suffer meaninglessly, okay? And so Frankl said, well, and think about it. What brought us through was hope, and hope was built on meaning. But within these concentration camps, there was no meaning to be found. Neither could they create nor could they experience any type of beauty. So Frankl said, all there was pain, was suffering. And so he said, if you take your suffering as your task, then through that task and through through your suffering, you can generate meaning. And this meaning is what gives you hope. And this hope is what lets you keep going. How can suffering, my own suffering, be in any way meaningful? And so if you look through Frankl's lens, you need to understand the following thing. Everyone, we all as humans are greatly similar, but we also are uniquely ourselves. So there's a unique characteristic about every human being that is independent of performance. It is simply the person itself is unique. And then you have the situation in which an act would happen. And so this situation also is in its context and time unique. So in Frankl's thinking, out of this predisposition, we kind of have a double bind here, a double uniqueness. Out of this predisposition arises the fact that in every situation, a single person, there is a question, an answer, and an opportunity that only this very specific one person can give in this very specific one moment. And in that uniqueness, double bind, lies the meaning. And through that, you can find meaning in your suffering. Basically, it means that the way you generally and genuinely suffer is meaningful. That is the very thing. I know that's hard to understand. It's a big thing to say. But there's this one thing, and I think it just speaks for Frankl, and it's perhaps this is one of the greatest insights we get from this very horrific time. So if you think about it, so Frankl said this, so you should read Man's Search for Meaning. This isn't a direct quote, but indirectly he said that there's a space between the stimulus, between what's happening to me and between how I react to what's happening to me. And within that space is what he calls man's last inner freedom. And this last inner freedom that man has is to be able to decide themselves how they react to what's happening to them. And simply look at it like this. Nazi Germany and the SS, with Auschwitz and all their concentration camps, with all the horrors they could think of, with everything they had in their power, what they couldn't get was this one space where these inmates, dearly and poorly as they were, could still generate meaning, which led to them being hopeful, which led to them not breaking, which is amazing in my opinion. And so to this kind of thinking, right, there's another author, it's a Russian author, and it's Dostoyevsky. He once wrote, I dread only one thing, and that is to be unworthy of my suffering. And I think this puts its finger right on what Frankl's insights tell us about finding this space within you. Before we end this talk, I also want to quote another important contributor to this field, Nietzsche, who, and I think it was Frankl who said this, said that the one who has a why to live for can bear almost anyhow. And this also very much sums up the point of this video. And let me take the bridge to last week's videos. So we talked about anxiety, we talked about avoidance, confronting, we talked about acceptance being the bridge, and anxiety being a signal giver. But now, when you're really there, what you now need is a good why. You need a reason. You need a reason to take on this suffering. You need something that's so important to you, that's so meaningful to you, that you're okay, That you know, in other words, you take on whatever it takes because it is so meaningful to you. And that's what these people are talking about. And so this is what I'm going to leave you with. What areas of your life, like what people, what things in your life are so meaningful to you that you'd be willing to suffer for them, that you'd be willing to take whatever it takes, that you'd be perhaps willing to go through hell for them. Because, and this is Frankl's gift to us, a confrontation without a why, without meaning, is merely stress on your body. But a confrontation with a meaning becomes transformative. And then we're straight back into Jung's territory. Okay, so that's it for today. Thanks everyone for watching this video. I hope it was entertaining and informative. And thanks for watching. I'll see you next week.